In this video, I want to share with you how to use the indirect formula to automate your workflow or process. So for example, if you're working in Excel or Google Sheet and you have multiple tabs like this, right? January, February, March, and you have data on each of these tabs. Let's say you're working on a reconciliation or monthly income and expense or like a monthly budget, right? So you have data on each of these tabs from January to December, and now you want to summarize that data, right? So for example, I have a summary tab here. I want to summarize all the data that I have from January to December. So I want to summarize all the income that I have and all the expenses on each of the tab. So one way to do this is what I can do is I go to equal, and then I go to January because here's the January, right? So I go here equal January. So then I get the income, right? But I want to make this dynamic, right? So I just want to do this within a few seconds. So what can I do? Can I just grab this cell here and drag it to the right? Would that work for me? The answer is no, because when you drag it directly to the right like this, the formula just thinks, oh, you want the information on the same tab but just on a different cell. So you can see here, right, it's going from C4 to or January C4 to January D4. So that's not what I want. I wanted February. But and I can't just drag it, so as you can see, right, because it's just going to the same tab and it's grabbing this different cell. Then I would have to do it manually, right? So doing it manually for every month like that can take a lot of time. So one way to automate this is you can use the indirect formula. So the indirect formula in Excel and Google Sheet is actually a very powerful tool. So what the indirect formula does is that it returns the value of a cell based on a text string. So instead of directly referencing a cell, it allows you to build that reference as a string and then evaluate it. So for example, if you look at this, right? So when we go in and we look at, we get the data for the income equal January, and then it's at the cell C4, right? So you can see what this looks like here. So it's just saying equal January C4. So let me bring this down. We can replicate that. We can put that into the indirect formula so it can be dynamic, right? We just need to replicate this January exclamation point C4. Okay, so what we can do is we can do indirect. So once you pick indirect, it's going to ask you for the reference text, okay? So what we can do is we can do C3 here. We just pick C3. So why we need to pick this C3 up here is because this here, the name, January, is the same as this January, February tab here, right? So all of this month that I have at the top here on row C3 is the same as the tab name, right? So that's why I'm referencing it. So I'm telling it, hey, look at January for this one. Look at January. And then put an ampersand, and then quotes, exclamation point, C4, and then close the quote, and then close the bracket. So you can see here, I'm getting the same data, right? So I'm just replicating this January exclamation C4, right? January exclamation C4. So and is just combining those two. So you can see now when I drag it, it's gonna grab the data. So here you can see February, it's getting February, right? So you can see we go to February, we look here on C4, for February is 20,000, and then March is 30,000, right? So this is correct. So it's grabbing the data correctly. So each of the month is grabbing from the correct tab. So that's how you would automate information using an indirect formula instead of having to go in and go equal to each of those tabs. So same thing about the expense tab, right? So here you can do same thing. So go indirect, right? So reference this as the name, ampersand, right? So now we wanted C5, oops, exclamation point, C5. There you go. Just drag it across. Okay. So that's one easy way to automate your workflow with an indirect formula. So one thing to note is this will work very well if all of your information are on different tabs, but the information is on the same cell in each of those tabs, right? So for example, January is on C4 for income. I'm sorry, January here is on C4 for income, and February is also on C4. They're just on different tabs. So indirect worked really well in those situations when you have like a summary like this, right? So it saves you a ton of time. So I hope that is helpful to you, and thank you so much for watching.